Hi everyone, we're back to the question and answer session, so thanks for bearing with us as we went through those technical difficulties. So I'm back and I'm just trying to catch where we last answered questions. So are budgets required for awards originally submitted with modular budget? It's a great question. There's, oh, so hold on, we're just having, yeah, okay. Sorry, I apologize there. I was distracted. Are budgets required for awards originally submitted with a modular budget? So the answer to that is it depends. If your award was issued as a SNAP, it would not be requiring a budget. If it was issued as a non-SNAP, it would require a detailed budget. So again, you're going to go back and look at the notice of award to see if you're under the SNAP authorities or not. When the RPPR link will be available for when will the RPPR link be available for T32s in the ERA Commons? I have 2 progress reports due in January and no link is available yet. Okay, the CTS program, sorry, that question was already answered. The CTSA program is a linked award that is composed of a UL1, a KL2, and a TL1 grant. Would we submit 2 or 3 RPPRs, or is this CTSA RPPR going to combine all 3 into one? The answer to that question is you will submit an RPPR for each of the awards you were issued. So if this was issued as 3 separate awards, you would submit 3 separate awards, one for each. You would submit 3 separate RPPRs, one for each of those awards. So if you got a notice of award, you will be submitting an RPPR for that. To clarify, grad and undergraduate students do have ERA Commons IDs now, even though it's only showing up as a warning in the RPPR. If my institution submits the RPPR as it is without the ERA Commons IDs, will it be kicked back? So thank you for asking that question so we can clarify it again. So at this point, the only requirement for the Commons ID is for the PDPI and for the postdoc. So that's how it is now. It's how it's been since since before we introduced the RPPR, but certainly we introduced that edit check when we rolled out the RPPR for SNAP awards. The graduate student and undergraduate student check will run. However, at this point, what you're going to get is a warning. Once we transition and we begin to require that, that warning will change from a warning to an error, and we anticipate that that will happen in around October of next year. Is there guidance on how to submit budgets where you have more than 30 subcontracts? So we seem to be getting that question in a couple of times. I'm not sure that we've addressed it completely right now in the NIH RPPR instruction guide. It is one thing that we'll take back from this presentation and go to make sure that we have captured that appropriately for you in that instruction guide. If we haven't, we will expand that information, and we will also try to address this in the frequently asked questions. Does the Commons allow 2 people to be in the application at the same time? And I'm going to let Scarlett answer this one.
No, it does not. The application needs to be through the workflow. It can be assigned to an assistant, or the assistant can be in, and then the PI can be in. But at this time, only one person can be working on it at a time.
Will the project lead be able to complete the component sections from multi-projects, or is it limited to only the PI of the overall award? So anybody who has delegated authority to be working on it can be working on it. It does not operate like Assist does, where you can assign different portions to different people. And I'm going to let Scarlett expand on that if she would like to.
Sure. So as long as the person has a Commons ID and is affiliated with your institution, that you can assign, give them rights to delegate rights for progress reporting, and at that point they can work on it. Also, those that are considered multi-PIs also will be able to work on these, and your AOs and your signing officials also will be allowed to work on these. So if the person is a project lead but does not have any of those roles, then there's a problem. You will have to get them an account with your affiliated with your institution, and then assign them, delegate them that delegation.
Will we get a copy of this presentation emailed to us, or will we be directed to a link? So if you go to the resources slide, the last slide of the presentation, you'll see a link there to the RPPR webpage. Or you can just type in RPPR into your Google search. Our NIH RPPR page is actually the first thing that comes up. So if you go there, we will place a link to this training on there. Our institute is involved in the pilot programs for the T32 progress reports due on 12/1. I noticed that one of the reports in the ERA Commons does not have an option to initiate the progress report. Who do I obtain to contact that option?
If you send an email to myself, or if you report it to the ERA help desk, we will look into that to make sure that we are getting the links out there as they are supposed to be. If they're not, we will investigate and get a link out as soon as possible.
If a publication is not consistent with the public access policy, should we hold off on submitting the application until it's resolved? And I'm actually going to switch this one over to Jana Worley, one of our program officers, to answer this question.
Hi, usually the situation is that you're not sending in your application at the last minute, you're sending it in at the appropriate time, either 4 or 6 or 8 weeks ahead of the deadline. And in that case, you may be better off to just go ahead and send it in. Either way, you have to get the publication properly submitted and part of the PubMed Central process. And you can do that during the time that the application is being reviewed and processed here at NIH. And then as soon as the publication becomes compliant, you can send that information directly to the grants management specialist and the program official, and they can go ahead and fold that into their review that the publication is now okay. If you wait until the last minute, if you submit your RPPR late, then you're not going to have much time either way. But if you submit your RPPR on time, you have usually either 6 or 8 weeks to get go through the process, and that's usually enough. As you can imagine, we have a bit of a backlog because of the furlough, but they're working as hard as they can to bring that down. So I would say go ahead, understand what the problem is so that you know what to do to fix the problem. Go ahead and send the RPPR in. You'll get the notification, and then you can start or continue working. And as soon as you have the validation information, just send it to the grants management specialist or the program person.
Thank you, Jana. Once the RPPR link is selected, must we submit via the RPPR, or may we decide to submit by paper? You can go ahead and initiate the RPPR, and if you do choose to change your mind and submit through the PHS 2590, you may do so. That will always look, though, as an initiated RPPR that's kind of sitting out there, but we will still be able to receive and process your RPPR, and I'm going to let Scarlett add a few words here.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is you can do it that way, but don't do it the other way around. Once you've submitted the paper, it's in there, and the link will not be accessible after that. So it's okay to go ahead and start and decide you want to submit paper, but don't submit paper and then try to submit electronically.
There's a question here. Is there a timeline for the multi-year funded progress reports at this time? And I believe that's to be using the RPPR. So if you go to one of, I think it's probably about slide 6, somewhere around there when we post the presentation, there's a timeline for all of our RPPR implementation. The multi-year funded is covered under there. At this point, we anticipate that that's going to roll out very near February the 1st. We anticipate in the next week or two issuing a guide notice that will have that final date captured. So we certainly encourage you to look at the NIH guides for that publication, which will be out shortly. Regarding publications, some PIs will go ahead and remove the non-compliant publication report rather than hold up the award. What would your reply be to these PIs?
Hi, it's Jan again. You have to understand that there are several terms and conditions of the award that would be violated in that case. One is the requirement to submit publications and have them available to the public through the PubMed Central database. The other is to submit a complete and correct report of the work that has come from the grant during the previous year. Basically, under no circumstances do you want to do that, because it's a violation of the terms and conditions that the university or the grantee and the PI have agreed to.
Okay, we had a question here. Do undergraduate hourly employees need a Commons ID? They're not in training. So right now what the system is going to be looking at is a role-based validation. So if you enter their role as undergraduate student, then it will be looking to see if there's a Commons ID. Now they'll be giving a warning. In the future, we'll be giving an error. I think that's a great question, and one that before we begin to require and enforce that, we will clarify in our FAQs. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. Jenna just indicated that we should submit our RPPR on time, even though we know that there is a non-compliant publication included. However, the certification the signing official now agrees to states that we are certifying that we are in compliance with the terms and conditions of award, and therefore I would say it's unwise to submit with non-compliant publications.
Well, our signal to you is that it is not yet an error that an application is submitted with a non-compliant publication. It's only a warning, and that says that, you know, you should be aware that there's this problem, but we're not forbidding you to submit the application, and that reflects our decision that you have some time to go ahead and get this in compliance. That it could happen in the future that would become unacceptable, and in that case there would ERA would create an error so that you could not submit that application with a non-compliant. But we're not doing that at this time.
Publication seems to be a popular subject. There's one more question on publications. For each grant year, should I only list new publications that were not reported in a previous grant year?
Yes, that's correct. You're only report publications from the year on which you're reporting at that time. The reason that you currently will see some previously reported non-compliant publications in the RPPR when it prints out is it's looking back into the database and trying to catch up with records from the past. But those are not things that you don't enter past applications. The computer will say there are past applications.
Okay, so we have a question here a little bit about special reporting requirements, and this is one thing that we brought up in the previous training, but haven't necessarily highlighted here. As we transition to these more complicated and larger awards, we definitely know that there are some special reporting requirements out there. We have a section G1 in the RPPR, which is available to accommodate any special reporting needs that you have associated with your project. I think this is a little bit of something that we're going to end up having to work out. There's going to be natural places, I think, in the RPPR where you're going to be providing that information. If there is no natural place in the RPPR, you would provide it in the response to G1. And I would certainly encourage you to contact your program official and work with them to see how they want you to respond, especially if you have a directive, for example, in your notice of award for a specific reporting requirement that's beyond what we generally require. We had another question about what happens if I select no to the component question and then I realize I should have selected yes. So the answer to that question is if you've either incorrectly selected no or yes, at that point, what you're going to have to do is contact the ERA help desk so that they can reset that RPPR. And when I say reset that RPPR, I mean that anything that's already in there would be lost. So go ahead and save any information that you have that you need, and just be sure that you're asking yourself a couple of times before you say yes or no, is this really the answer I want? Because it can be a little bit painful if you select the wrong one and need to change back, because then you do have to contact us and get our help, and you would lose any work that had already been captured in the system. If I do an RPPR this year with a detailed budget, when I do another next year, will the information be pre-populated in the budget, i.e. will the personnel already be listed?
Hi, this is Melissa. Basically, this one is a future enhancement, and so we'll be implementing this next year. So around this time next year, you will be able to do that.
What should be done if in year one we report a publication, but the publisher for some reason holds the publication, and now it's published in year two? Do we report the same article in year two of the RPPR?
The my NCBI system that does the check on whether publications that are listed are or are not compliant, they actually pay attention to whether the paper has actually been published yet. And as you probably know, we have a lag time which we allow for publications to come into compliance, which is 3 months past the publication date, the actual publication date, not perhaps the intended publication date. So it's important to start the process of submitting to PMC in a timely fashion, for instance, as soon as that acceptance letter is received. But you don't need to report the same paper again, because the MyNCBI PubMed Central computer will remember that you submitted it, and they will keep tabs until it's actually published, and only if it's more than 3 months after the date that it's actually published will they consider it to be non-compliant.
So we've had a number of questions about where do we put the T32 tables. That's a good question. I actually think I know the answer to this one, but I don't. I'm 98% sure, but in case I'm not right, I'm going to hold off on that, and I will address that in the FAQs, just so that you have appropriate direction for that. So we will address where you should be submitting your tables for your T32s. Is there a way to enter the subcontract information manually just in case it's not included in the list? What a great question. Yes, you can do that. You would just need to write it in. One caveat there, however, is you would need to have the DUNS number of that subaward institution. If you don't have that systematically, it won't let that subaward budget be saved and submitted. So let me just scroll through the list of questions here. I think that I've answered most of them, so please take this time if you still have a question you haven't asked to go ahead and submit that, and I'm just going to review the list of questions that have come in so far to make sure that we've answered them all. It looks like we have, and I don't see any more questions coming in, so this is your last call to submit questions. And otherwise, we would certainly, on behalf of all of us at NIH here that have worked on this project, we certainly thank you for your interest and your willingness to participate in this pilot. The feedback that you give to us will be certainly invaluable as we make this a good tool for both you and for NIH staff as we're going forward. What if an international subcontract does not have a DUNS number? So the DUNS number is still required, and in fact, under FAFATA, any subaward is required to have a DUNS number. So if this is a subaward you've already issued, they should have a DUNS number. The international institutions are, they can register for DUNS numbers just like the domestic ones. I'm a subcontractor on a new PO1. Will I have to do a separate progress report next year or only the prime institution? There's only one RPPR that's submitted. It is both prepared and submitted by the grantee organization. So if you're a subcontractor, I'm sure that you'll be working closely with both the PI and the administrative officials at the grantee organization to get that information to them so that they can submit a complete RPPR. Where do we send feedback? So that's a great question. If you have technical feedback, that will go to Melissa Daly and to Scarlett Gibb. And if you have policy questions or just general questions, you're not sure where it falls, you can certainly send it to them and to also to Maria Kozalka and myself. That will ensure that we're all there. The four of us kind of lead this project together, and then that does help us kind of figure out what the issues are and help prioritize what the fixes are or where we need to improve our communications or whatnot. So we are all at NIH. We have unique enough names that you can find us pretty easily. So is there a process in place to provide feedback from the pilot? At this point, what we're doing is encouraging you. This is a very quick turnaround for this pilot, and when we would have a chance to incorporate things before we're considering requiring it. So we would certainly encourage you not to hold off on those suggestions, but as you have them, go ahead and capture them in an email and send it off. And if you end up sending 5 different suggestions, that's okay. But it does mean that we get the information in a timely manner, and we can begin to really review things and see where we are and see how many changes need to be made, either in communications or in the system itself. So we have another question about the T32 tables. Again, I did not address that specifically here. I do think I know where the answers to those tables should go in the RPPR, but I want to double check that. I don't think we captured it in the NIH RPPR instruction guide, but we will definitely go back and look at that, and we will look at answering that in the FAQs. So we do understand it's a pressing question for you, and that will be the first FAQ that we will work on to post. So again, we'd like to thank you. I don't see any more questions. We'd like to thank you for your time and certainly your efforts as you help us work to make a better product for you. And we're hoping for a successful pilot. We hope you have a great day.